Good evening, people. I just want to make a quick video regarding the upcoming disclosure on the UFO situation. And I have been listening to a lady for many years now called Ashayana Dean. She wrote books called Voyager and Voyager 2. And she said if and when they disclose that there are UFOs or off-world like civilizations and life, then when they disclose it, watch out and get ready because all hell is going to break loose. So get your bug out bag ready, get yourself a plan. If this shiz hits the fan, get ready. Hello, what's up, JP?
Evening,
all right, mate?
people. I just want to make a quick video regarding the upcoming.
You right? You right? There's fires. Look at this fire. Yes, mate. Yes, brother. Look at that. Burn, baby, burn. Yeah, I've been playing these Voyager books. Worth checking out, believe me. A lot of information in them. But yeah, she said if and when they do actually have disclosure, as it were, then all hell will break loose. Quite scary, really, isn't it? I think we're getting closer and closer to that point. Ooh, what have you been up to today, brother? I was telling you yesterday you've gone. A fucking shit day the day before. Bloody, my friend Sam, who seems to sort of head out with Dale and Zena, she kicked on her 50th birthday as well. She went fucking doolally. I left. I was like, she was supposed to be having a birthday party. Started kicking right off. Kicked out Dale. And she fucking sent Zena to the pound. So I don't know what's going to happen with her. Absolutely gutted. Pissed right off. There's nothing I can do, really. Not my dog. It's one of those things, isn't it? Rubbish. Absolutely fucking rubbish. There you go. That's life. Shouldn't get attached, really. But it's difficult with a dog like that. What's that? Fresh?
Quest, yeah, they got all.
Oh, Quest, yeah.
At the moment, they got the gold diggers on in Australia. They're digging for all the gold with the diggers and that. Mental, are you getting those?
Yeah. Oh, mate. What's up, punk? What's up, punk? Oh, yeah, so Spidey. Oh, what's retracted? I don't mind being called punk. Call me Spunk if you want. Oh. Got myself some citronella. Smells beautiful, doesn't it? Oh, lovely. Right, hang on. Well, put some more wood on this fire. We went to the woods last night. Not the scary woods. There's some woods called the Bluebell Woods. It's totally different like feeling there. There's no weirdness. There's no sketchiness at all. It's not actually. We heard an owl. It's not like the other woods that are full of ravens and different birds and herons and that. It's very quiet and peaceful. And we've got loads of wood. And today, next door to Cabs, they basically dismantled 2 old sheds and are chucking them out front. So we dragged them in and we was breaking them up, and loads of wood, which is good for a fire, obviously. Good wood. Glorious good wood. Oh, nice. Don't get me on edibles. They fuck me right up. Right, put some more fucking wood on this right here. Go. Where are you, Turtle? You're in the river, in the sea. Are you a ninja? Good evening, people. I just want to make a quick video regarding the up in the sewers. Yes, Master Splinter. Yes, Master Splinter. Well, this fire's gonna go fucking wild in a minute. Yeah, this oh god, banging about David Attenborough. He is one of the fucking worst people. He's one of the ultimate Illuminati people, he is. Absolutely go and love him, but look into his history, he's not a good guy. Not a good guy, old school Aristo. Let's find that actually. Excuse me. Right, where are we? He's a vamp. Yeah, Voyages Part 1. The channel is called Occult Library, and it is good.
Case of the latter. Zeta are utilizing the interior's greed for power. They are helping to orchestrate the utilization of holographic inserts on large masses of people. So the interior government thinks the Zeta are assisting them to put in place certain mass frequency control devices that eventually have the power to scramble selected human brain wave patterns, blocking out frequencies coming from sources outside of government control, such as those transmitted by ET and other dimensional groups, and also the frequency patterns emanating from the personal.
Occult Library is what it's called. Somebody put this fucking light. This is bright. Is it bright? Too bright? Huh? My fire's going to take off in a minute. Right. Oh, I forgot that. No, not I forgot that. Oh dear.
And collective soul matrix, but the Zeta are in actuality working toward orchestration of a different plan. Zeta are helping to create this frequency fence, but not in order to assist the interior government in creating a docile and obedient populace. Interior desires to control the mental and emotional forces within the populace in order to use individuals and masses to do their bidding. They are interested in creating a form of super soldier that will be able to easily neutralize simple human armies. By setting itself up as the invisible big brother, they will not only be able to hoard and control the distribution of Earth's resources, but they hope to be able to explore and conquer new territories once the time portal codes are activated. Their purpose is to plunder for personal gain and for the thrill of the kill in bringing others under their dominion. Other abusive forces that do exist within the universe watch them with amusement, as the interior is playing right into their hands. As the interior moves silently forward with its plan of dominion, their Zeta helpers are using them to help fulfill their personal agenda. The interior is more concerned with keeping people distracted, fragmented, and confused, so they do not notice that their freedom is being stolen out from under them. Unenlightened Zeta have something else in mind. These factions of the Zeta race, resigning themselves to the probability that they would reach extinction before finding a way to return to their own planet and time continuum, decided to opt for the next best solution. If they could cultivate hybrids acclimated to the Earth environment, they would be able to repopulate the planet. There is one small obstacle in the way of this plan, however, the parts of the human race. Other species could easily be dominated and integrated into a Zeta-regulated society. Humans will not be easy to subdue, and the Zeta know this. Zeta acknowledge their present dependence upon the species for the provision of genetic material. They have a plan of segregating the global population into those possessing desirable genetic qualities and those who do not have qualities they care to reproduce. Humans chosen as breeders would be utilized to create a workforce to supply Zeta needs, and the best among them genetically would be used to create various strains of hybrid beings to strengthen and recolonize their settlement on Earth. Humans presently do not have the power to successfully ward off the Zeta through force. The planet would be plundered in the attempt to do so. Humans' greatest defense is becoming aware of what is taking place and uniting their energies with those willing to assist in the name of universal brotherhood.
The Zeta
Renegade Zeta must not be permitted to fulfill their plan. Though this plan is still in its early stages within your three-dimensional Earth system, this is not the case in several parallel and adjacent systems. One adjacent system in particular has been fully infiltrated, and those controlling that reality have their sights set upon expanding into your three-dimensional Earth system at a time coordinate that exists within your future. Humans that enjoy their present levels of freedom within the democracies of Earth and those who believe in the liberties of a free society had best take heed of the events now occurring within that adjacent system, as the groundwork for its interception is presently being set within your global community by the interior government forces. We'll elaborate upon this adjacent Earth system in sections to follow, but for now we will return to our discussion of holographic inserts and how they are presently being used to direct the perceptions of your people. Previously we mentioned that holographic inserts using themes popular within your traditions were being used in test runs of the project.
Chapter 1. Human Condition.
Test runs of the project. Most of these tests were orchestrated using individuals or small groups of people, in which scenarios pertinent to these subjects were created and the emotional reaction patterns of the participants were studied. Attention is paid to perceptual range of the human subject, as the Zeta are aware that are great variations among the populace in regard to perceptual ability. They are attempting to find a consensual mean of frequency through which they can broadcast the holograms and hope to use the frequency fence to block out frequency bands that do not fall within that average range. This way large masses of people can be tuned into the particular range of the holographic insert and blocked from receiving frequency that would create sense data that was in contradiction to the illusion of the insert. Inserts are being designed to engage the emotional facilities of the human. Themes deeply engraved within the minds of the people are being contrived into distorted interpretations of events that have basis in reality for the subjects. Zeta have time portal access. They have been able to monitor some of the activities of the other ET, interdimensional and guardian groups who are planning to create encounters with humans for purposes of helping the populations to grow and evolve successfully. So the Zeta will not be able to stop these helping groups, or halt the implementation of the events they plan to create. They are able to scan the intended events and create distorted versions of them through the holographic inserts. Over the next 20 years, alignments of certain key time portal structures are occurring, following the cycle intrinsic to your planetary placement within the galactic grid. These alignments make it easier for data to be entered into your system from other times and other dimensions. Many of the helping groups intend to use this opportunity to introduce new information and technologies that will assist in the evolution of your species. Zeta and the Interior are aware of this, and they do not want this information to be made available to the masses as it is intended. They are planning now to raid certain of the positive agendas, creating misleading holographic inserts that will direct the perceptions and thoughts of the populace away from the applications of the positive agendas. Zeta are using images, scenarios and personages held sacred to the traditional religions to divert the people into submission, subservience and blind obedience to the official and covert governments. Philosophies that rely upon congregational following of authorities, in which people are taught to trust the leader's interpretation of spirituality above their own spiritual comprehension, a practice coloring most of the world's traditional religions, are primary targets for manipulation using holographic inserts. Christian and Jewish faiths, Eastern practices and traditions popular within the South American continent have been singled out as primary testing grounds for the implementation of holographic inserts on a mass level. People who blindly follow the dictates of these traditions and those who lead them are especially vulnerable to holographic manipulation. David Koresh and the Waco, Texas, Branch Davidians and Marshall Applewhite and the Heaven's Gate Group are two such organizations that have been manipulated by the unenlightened Zeta through holographic insert technology. The inserts have been and will be used to lead people away from the true divinity that lives within them and from any true spiritual connection. Desired result of this manipulation is to sever the actual energetic connection of the individual to the personal soul matrix and reconnect the individual to a group mind network existing within another dimensional structure. Zeta are well aware of the multidimensional operation of the collective mind, as their own species existed for centuries under such a structure. Though the mechanics of this endeavor are complex, the concept is simple. All people exist as individualized embodiments of a greater energetic identity. This greater identity can be viewed as the portion of their conscious awareness that is too large in energy volume to fit into the limited confines of the body structure. Body, and the consciousness focused within it exist within this greater pool of energy, and it is this energy that creates the body, sets the autonomic body processes, and continually feeds the body life force energy. There are certain structures that link the body, mind and emotions to this soul matrix of energy. The error, reference source not found. It is possible, for those who understand how to manipulate the subtle energy bodies, to splice an individual from one soul matrix into another matrix, and disconnect the bioenergetic circuitry from the original soul. This process can be used to assist individuals under certain conditions, but it can also be used to disable them from connecting with their greater identity and innate spiritual connection. When used in negative applications, you could view this process as soul robbing, as the physical embodiment is stolen from its original soul matrix. This is precisely what the Zeta have in mind as part of their agenda. Linking those selected from the human populace into a false matrix, part of the original Zeta collective mind matrix, humans would be easily controlled as the false matrix would continually sustain certain holographic inserts, make them appear as permanent features of reality. Essentially illusional reality could be sustained in such a way, and the humans involved would have no idea or memory indicating that anything was out of order. The individual becomes disconnected from its original soul matrix. All memory contained within its DNA and cellular pattern is wiped away, as it is the soul matrix that acts as the programming device and storage house for human memory. The human is fully connected to the false matrix. The original connection to the soul can then be disengaged, and the new matrix will program the DNA and download the memories purposely programmed into the false matrix. At this point in the process, there would be a brief lapse of all memory, and a minor disability in short-term memory functions, while the cellular code begins to process its new set of instructions. There may be trace memories from the original soul program that arise to awareness in ghost image form, which will occasionally create severe mental disturbances for the human subject. Pieces of memory from the old program may emerge spontaneously from cellular residue and interface with the operational instructions from the new program, distorting the electrical impulse patterns to the brain, as well as the chemical balances of the human biology. In severe cases, the individual will be unable to hold a consistent present moment focus in time, and will flip back and forth between a multitude of identity fragments that represent pieces of memory from both residual traces of the old soul matrix, not only memory bits from the individual but also from the entire bank of identities stored in the soul matrix, and fragmented pieces of the new program and the entire contents of the Zeta collective false matrix. Human biology is not designed to assimilate such an onslaught of inconsistent electrical data and will be biologically unable to process the memory fragments into a coherent focus of identity in time. Should the unenlightened Zeta plan from the old agenda reach fulfillment, your populace would literally be robbed of its individual and collective memory, creating biological puppets that the Zeta could program in any way they choose. This way, they will be able to take advantage of certain desirable strains of humans while easily controlling them by directing the contours of the individual and mass identities. The complexity of orchestrating a mental takeover on a species level is vast, but it has been done before at different times within all of the dimensions. The aftermath of such a project is always disastrous in the long run, for the planet and local galactic structure as well as for the life forms existing within those systems. There are areas within the intergalactic and multidimensional grid that at different times have literally been blown out of the grid and cut off from the reality fields of which they were a part. Like humans and other biological individuals, planets and galaxies also possess a soul matrix, of which the soul matrices of all the system's inhabitants are a part. All of these grids or matrices are created through and connected to the time matrix. Reference source not found. The time matrix is the energy distribution system which carries life force energy from source into the dimensional systems. When a planet or galaxy is blown out of the grid of its soul matrix, which directly connects it to the time matrix and thus perpetual energy supply, its energy and its evolutionary potentials become finite. The system falls into digression, and as its finite energy quotient is expended, the system has no way to replenish its supply. The existing energy is recycled within the system, but will eventually become negated as the recycling continually reduces the thrust or power contained within its particles. Matter forms within such a system deplete, atrophy and eventually, sometimes over hundreds of thousands of years, implode, their blueprint, and thus the possibility of regeneration or replication, fragmented into unorganized units of energy and consciousness. This fragmented energy is the state of being indicated by your concept of oblivion. It is the condition your religious concept of Hades or hell was intended to depict, in symbolic form. The concept of purgatory describes the experience of living within a system that was cut off from the grid, before its pending implosion. It has also been used to indicate the state of being for the personality who has become severed from its own soul matrix. Zeta planet destruction. All within the time matrix grid is interconnected, and when a planet or galaxy is blown off the grid, a hole is left within the grid fabric. This hole affects everything within the area of activity surrounding the hole, as energy flowing around the broken grid lines hits blank spots or breaks in the pattern. Grid lines within the time matrix represent time continuum, or branchways of linear time sequencing. When energy approaches the hole in the fabric of the time matrix, it is magnetically pulled into the hole. Once it enters the hole, the time sequence organization that it originally carried as part of the time matrix becomes scrambled, and the energy is no longer able to re-enter the time matrix from the position in which it first entered the hole. This energy can take the form of an individual in biological form, a personal soul matrix or soul, a planet or galaxy, or the entire galactic soul matrix. When one element from within a given time continuum enters the whole, its own sequential program will serve as a beacon for all other energies possessing that particular coding. This beacon not only broadcasts its signal back into the time matrix through its electrical particles, which act as transmitters, but it also begins to draw in like energy through its magnetic particles, which act as magnetic receivers. Element lost within the hole then pulls in more and more energy from its home system. The holes we are referring to are, of course, the phenomena you describe as black holes. As described in previous sections, the Zeta originally entered your system as they searched for solutions involving conditions that occurred upon their own planet, Apaxian Lao. Conditions the Zeta hoped to remedy are precisely those described above. Through their experimentation with dimensional frequency blending, they created a situation in which a minute hole was ripped into the frequency pattern of the regions involved in the dimensional merge. The intended merger of dimensional fields was not successful, as the hole would not allow the area of frequency blending to stabilize into a consistent particle code pattern that would allow for a stable linear time sequence to take hold. Blended dimension reality field was kept open for several hundred years before the Zeta became aware of the hole. Great amount of energy from this blended region fell into the hole and systematically pulled in more and more energy. Black holes will pull in first those forms that possess energy coding that is consistent with the coding of the particles that exist at the site of the hole. That is, the items to first disappear are those whose particle structures are in the continuum, or grid strand, where the break-in pattern has occurred. In the Zeta incident, this particle compatibility emerged within certain elemental components of the outer atmosphere of their home planet. For centuries, there became an obvious depletion of this elemental component within their atmosphere, which is what led the Zeta to suspect that there was a problem with their dimensional blending project. The hole was finally located and identified by observing the rate and form of depletion of controlled samples of the outer atmosphere. Depletion rate was accelerated when the samples were placed in various locations upon the planet. They were able to pinpoint the hole by observing particle movement and following the path of accelerated particle depletion for the element in question. They were able to follow the beacons emitted by the particles within the hole, but only to a certain point at which the beacons, minute electrical emissions, would disappear. It took several generations to discover that these particles were pulling in an exponentially expansive quantity of matter. Particles would disappear as the scrambling of their base-time code structure occurred. The original code was unraveled, its elements dispersed within the reality fields of the black hole. Zeta realized that this condition was a result of the dimensional blend, and so they hoped that by undoing the blend and closing the mediation zone between the dimensional portals that had been forced open, that they could effectively disengage the black hole. What they did not realize is that once a hole is created, it will continue to exist until all energy that passed through it is reclaimed and restored to its original time sequence organization. They were able to close the mediation zone effectively, and when they observed the area where the hole had been, the hole was no longer there. Zeta assumed that they had closed the hole when they closed the mediation zone territories in which it had existed. This was not the case. The mediation zone had been created by merging certain frequency patterns of the third-dimensional and other dimensional versions of their planet. The frequency patterns of each were bent slightly until they came into range of each other. Then an artificial frequency splice was added to serve as a bridge between the two frequency bands. This bridge forced open an existing dimensional portal and kept it open as long as the bridge was open an existing dimensional portal and kept it open as long as the bridge was in place. This is a manipulation process that goes against universal law, as it throws the entire time cycle of which it is a part out of synchronization with the time matrix. Black hole was still encoded within the frequency patterns of both dimensions, and when the bridge was closed the whole pattern fragmented, changing location within the outer atmosphere of both planets. Again, it took generations to rediscover the continued existence and new location of the hull, and by this time the genetic mutations that this project had initiated began to show themselves. Knowing that the hull was responsible for their declining species, they hoped to retrieve and reorganize the lost energies so as to reverse the genetic mutation and restore health to their species. So they had the technology to seal off the hull and stop it from pulling energy. They did not do this because the hope of reversing the mutation was within retrieving the energy from the hull and permanently closing the structure. Zeta could no longer reside within their planet's atmosphere, and so they decided to evacuate and temporarily relocate to another planet within an adjacent dimension to their own, where they could continue with the project of retrieving the energies from the hull. They had not planned on anyone raiding their project, but that is what took place. Other, more advanced groups within the surrounding galaxy knew the danger of keeping the black hole opened. Was pulling energy at an alarming rate and posed a serious threat to the entire time matrix coordinate that was home to the Zeta and many others. Black hole was sealed, a process which took time and accelerated its magnetism. Zeta home planet and its dimensional counterpart were sucked in, leaving only a small portion of the planetary soul matrix behind within the time matrix. It is through this event that the Zeta became trapped within your system, and the others to which it had migrated. Literally homeless and rapidly declining, they had no choice but to seek other solutions. I hope that this little story about the Zeta will serve as education to your scientists who play with small particle mechanics before they have the knowledge to understand the consequences of their actions. Holographic inserts and matrix transplantation. Now we will resume our discussion about the Zeta plan to use holographic inserts and matrix transplantation to orchestrate a mental takeover of the human species. The soul robbery or forced matrix transplant occurs when the human is removed from its connection to its organic soul matrix and connected to another. For example, a cord of energy that once connected the human to the soul matrix is left hanging, so to speak. This cord spews energy from the soul matrix, just as your finger would spew blood if the tip was severed. This energy leakage is not stopped. The soul matrix itself would become depleted, as well as the energy structures that feed it, and a large buildup of energy would occur within the planetary grid. This energy buildup would follow the path of the particles carrying its code. A human who had been transplanted to another matrix structure would be natural receiver of this energy. The biological structure of the human is close-circuited into the new matrix. The energy would then be drawn into the other dimensional Earth version, or parallel universe, and to the individual residing in that system who represents the implied counterpart to the human living within your system. We'll not go into the mechanics of universal physics in this transmission, so it is enough that we say here that you have a reflection, double, or doppelganger, as some in your system call it, residing within a parallel system that represents the antiparticle to your particle. This double is often called the light body in your times, or sometimes the shadow. Both terms can be misleading, so we will use the terminology with which we are familiar. Refer to the double as the Dola imprint, or Dolus for short. Other writings we will elaborate upon the Dolus and its counterpart. For now, what you need to know to follow our discussion is that the Dolus will be the recipient of that spewing energy from the forced matrix transplant. This errant energy will emerge within a portion of the double's subtle energy bodies. Humans, and other biological organisms, are connected to the soul matrix by strands or cords of energy. The cord runs from the core unit of identity for that person as held within the soul matrix, and extends outward to a sac at its end. Some in your time refer to this sac as the tissue capsule. We call it the nadial capsule or the nadis. Nadis is a literal sac of energy that surrounds your physical body. contains all of the life force energy you will use in one lifetime as a single incarnation in time and space. Process of growth, in your terms, is the process of bringing the energies from within the nadis through into the biological form, thus expanding that form. Energy leaves the nadis and enters into the body. It must first pass through the two inner layers of the nadis. These inner natal structures are known in your time as the mental and emotional bodies, and they give to you the qualities of being you know as mental awareness, or thinking, and emotional cognition, or feeling. 5. The errant energies spewing from the severed cord are rechanneled into the dolus, other dimensional double, through its center point. Excess energy stimulates the opening of the center point within the dolus. These energies then become a part of the subtle energy bodies of the double, first entering the mental area, then filtering into the emotional body. The physical body of the double does not rapidly expand, which it cannot do if blocks in the mental body are present. To accommodate the new energy, this energy will build up within the emotional body of the double as erratic electrical impulse, which will throw the emotional balance out of whack, and with it the chemical and hormonal balances within the physical body. Left unchecked, this condition will cause acceleration of the aging process as the erratic patterns block the clear flow of energy from the nadis. The double is able to reactivate the center point, located near the heart region in the physical body, somewhat to the right of the heart, and often called the heart chakra, opening the channel for new energy from the soul matrix to flow in. The new soul energy will reorganize the errant patterns, if it can get through the mental body patterns. Expanding your mind is no joke. It is a very important energy process. Soul energy will then regulate the flow of the errant energy into and through the body. In a way more harmonious to its rhythms, the energy will then pass into the nadis, where the body can draw from it within its own rhythm pattern. The double cannot reactivate the center point and connect with soul, open its energy systems to that of the soul matrix. The double will experience emotional distress and imbalance, which will lead to disease of the body and early death. In this case, there will be energy left within the nadis that the body was unable to process. Double in the other dimension, the one who received the forced matrix transplant, is no longer available to receive the energy, and so the energy becomes trapped within that dimension, where it must wait until the time cycles allow it to reintegrate with its soul matrix. The identity, individual human, for example, and its dolus, double, exist as one identity package within the soul matrix. There are 12 such identity packages within one soul matrix, each being extended into different time/space continuums within the dimensional system. 6. All of these identity packages, which we call aspects or tauren, exist at once within the soul matrix and time matrix, each experiencing its own line of linear development within its respective time-space location. This group of 12 constitutes the soul family, and the existence of one aspect, person, implies the existence of the other 11 aspects. Soul family, which we call the Dora, moves in cyclic fashion within the time matrix. Within those cycles, each aspect has its own smaller cycle that constitutes its passage through time, or its lifespan. There is a sequential relationship to the aspect or tauren cycles, which implies a correlation between the births and deaths of its incarnates, tauron/aspects. In the case of soul robbery through forced matrix transplant, the early demise of the double/dolus affects the entire soul matrix cycle. We call the cycles of the soul matrix the ondant cycles and the smaller aspect cycles the tauren cycles. All of the tauren are accelerated in their rhythms, and all will reach depletion of cellular energy sooner than they would have otherwise. All will thus leave residual nadial energy within their respective dimensions, which will become trapped there unless at least one of the tauren are able to activate the center point and accelerate their physical body enough to allow the residual energies of all of the other tauren to be expanded into their own nadial field. One is able to perform this feat and complete its own nadial composition, then the soul matrix can move out of the dimensional bands involved. Soul matrix can evolve in this case. Soul matrix cannot leave the dimensional octave it is in until all of its residual energies are pulled back into the soul matrix. So you can see, if the Zeta implement their plan of forced matrix transplant upon large numbers of humans, a vast number of other individuals and soul families / Dora / soul matrices will be adversely affected. They will become stuck within their positions in the time matrix and unable to evolve until those trapped energies are released. Perhaps now you will be able to comprehend the serious nature of our communications. Much is at stake within this human / Zeta drama, most of which humans do not understand. Events and practices we have mentioned in this section all have direct bearing upon the future of your system, and the plan to begin the aforementioned mental takeover is now beginning to emerge within your three-dimensional Earth system. We have explained some of the methods by which this takeover will be orchestrated, from its inception through holographic inserts to its culmination in the Zeta collective mind link-up through forced matrix transplant. This is the plan that humans can help to redirect, by making a strong, genuine connection to their own soul matrix / Dora and learning to handle themselves within holographic inserts and Zeta abductions. These things are already going on around you, whether or not you are aware of them, whether or not you choose to believe that it is true. Those who understand can do a great deal to assist themselves, their soul families and their fellow humans if they are willing to grow, expand and learn. You might wonder how such a massive mental takeover could be pulled off behind your backs, so to speak. It is more so being done over your heads literally, as the manipulations involved are being conducted, to a large degree from dimensional frequency bands that are higher than the range of your perceptions. This is a plan that will take time to implement, so the sooner you are aware of these events, the sooner you will be able to redirect your future. In the following sections we will cover methods by which you can protect yourselves from being brought under the control of the aforementioned frequency fence. We will offer suggestions as to how holographic inserts can be maneuvered and also some clues to look for that will allow you to watch the progression of the events of which we speak. In closing this section, let us leave you with one final example of how this plan will be implemented, an example that may illustrate the power of the holographic insert to persuade human perception. What do you suppose might happen if 10,000 devout Christians suddenly saw Christ float down upon a cloud, or a spaceship? The skies tremble and open and the Savior, in the flesh, levitates down and begins to touch the heads of his beloved. Then he says, "Come with me to the promised kingdom," as a brilliant set of pearly gates appears behind him. "Follow," he utters as he turns and begins to walk through the gates. You think most of those devotees would say no? Who would be the wiser, except those creating the holographic insert, if those masses passed beyond the gates in ecstasy only to be marched through a dimensional portal? Portal their biological forms are not prepared to encounter. Who would mourn those people as they entered the portal and were incinerated upon contact, their bodies destroyed, their consciousness fragmented into the ethers while onlookers watched them move joyfully through the gates of heaven? Rather ingenious way to evacuate a planet of undesirables to clear the real estate for resettlement. Even those who did not go would not believe that anything bad had happened. Masses simply went with Christ to the promised lands, as had been foretold. This is what a holographic insert can do. Some of the Zeta, the unenlightened ones following the old agenda, are quite capable of this type of travesty. Not only are they capable of this is precisely the type of holographic drama they have, and once the frequency fence is in place. You find security in the concept of being sheep, then please, make sure you know who your shepherd is. Chapter 5, Awareness, Emotion, and Intuition Awareness. Presenting this material, we are not trying to frighten or mislead you, but we are trying to help those who are ready to become aware. For true salvation, protection and power will come through awareness, not through subjugation of self to illusions of outside authority. It takes courage to become aware and choose to look beyond the pat answers your culture has offered you for so long. Many of the problems presently facing humans are not created by humans alone. Have been left blind to the outside involvement that has influenced your development throughout history. Involvement of races of beings from other dimensions and their galactic origins. Presently have little idea of how drastically this involvement has influenced your evolution or how fully you have been manipulated. As long as you are unaware, you will not remember what has been stolen from you by certain of these visiting groups, the Zeta being only one member of a larger force, and that is precisely how they would like to keep the situation. Those who care about your evolution, who desire to see your species reach the freedoms, joys and power shared by many within the universe, realize the time has come for you to be informed. So we offer to you the information you need in your growth to awareness. Holographic inserts are a reality. This technology has been used to direct your race many times since its rebirth upon the planet Earth. Some of your historical facts are actually records of the dramas staged through holographic inserts. In the last section we discussed the use of forced matrix transplants. This idea may seem strange to you, perhaps impossible when viewed from your present state of disinformation. It might surprise you to know that this tactic has been used upon your species in the past, and is partially responsible for your present state of unawareness. Both holographic inserts and matrix transplants can be used to assist you. In your distant past, after certain malaligned ET forces began disrupting the genetic code of your developing species, other well-intended interstellar groups decided to intervene on your behalf. Certain soul matrices or soul families agreed to birth into your three-dimensional system and take on human form so that the digressive genetic code could be redirected back toward its original pattern. To these highly evolved beings entering your system, new probabilities for development were given to the human species. The period of time we are referring to involves a segment of linear history about 5,509,000 years ago. During this time there occurred events of which you have no record. These events did not involve a human strain of biology, but rather numerous others from your star system and others. We refer to these events as the Electric Wars. The Electric Wars. The Electric Wars lasted in your terms about 900 years. These events were orchestrated by certain factions of interstellar cultures who desired possession of the Earth territories. Some wanted it for observational purposes, others for exploitation. Beings who originally created the Turanusium race, first human prototype, wanted these territories protected so that their experiment could again be attempted. In order to secure the Earth territories for the rebirth of the Turanusium race, its creators had to make agreements with certain interdimensional forces who possessed the power to reclaim the Earth territories. Electric Wars began when pro- and anti-human ET factions fought over humanity's continuing right to evolve on Earth. Other dimensional forces were brought in to resolve the drama. These were not forces of a biological nature, but rather pure beings of power and awareness. Some refer to them as the Solar Lords, others call them the Great White Brotherhood. We know them as the Brno. Cannot describe to you the nature of their reality, for you presently do not have the conceptual basis for this understanding. Brno agreed to assist certain factions of the group who had created the Turanusium prototype. Creators of the Turanusium were a large, diversified group from your universe and also from other dimensional universes. Some had more involvement in the Turanusium 12 tribes experiment than others. Two groups from your galactic coordinate had greater interest in the experiment because of their proximity to Earth. Being part of the same intergalactic structure as Earth, their own realities would be affected by what transpired upon the planet. Knowing this, these groups petitioned the Brno for assistance in protecting the planet for further development. The two groups we are referring to here are associated with the galactic coordinates you know as the Sirian and Pleiadian star systems. In exchange for the assistance granted by the Brno, these two cultures agreed to allow the Brno to intervene in the 12 tribes experiment if they did not approve of the developments that took place. Brno are concerned with the successful evolution of all life throughout the entire time matrix and interdimensional systems. They granted their assistance under the agreement that the Sirian and Pleiadian cultures would step in on their behalf and allow the experiment to be redirected should it at any time pose a threat to the intergalactic/interdimensional structures. These cultures agreed to play this role, allowing the Brno to work as overseers of the project. About 20 million years ago, the new strain of Turanusium was entered into Earth and began to develop and again digress, and the Brno petitioned the Sirian councils for intervention in the project. did not desire to see a repetition of the previous Turun-Turanusium experiment, which caused the digression of Terra's planetary structure. First, the Brno wanted the experiment to be ended, the species destroyed and the sub-prototypes put out of operation. The Syrians, on behalf of the Turun-Turanusium from the first experiment, who had evolved well in other systems, requested that instead of ending the strain, the Brno assist them once more in redirecting the strain into a more productive pattern of evolution. Many in the multidimensional structures petitioned for this intervention, and so the Brno agreed to work with them in cultivating a species that possessed greater potentials. Brno made further agreements with certain soul matrix families that existed in dimensions more closely related to the Brno. These groups were asked to join the experiment taking place on Earth and to assist in restructuring the genetic imprint of the species. These groups entered into different time coordinates within the Earth structure and began seeding a higher mutation of the genetic code. These groups were used as the catalyst for matrix transplant. Large numbers of humans were led, through holographic inserts, into training programs that would allow for the development of intellect and greater self-awareness. Many of these early humans had already digressed to the point where their original soul matrices had become fragmented and cut off from the time matrix grid. In order for these beings to evolve out of their digression, a matrix transplant was used to repower their diminishing soul matrices. Soul families agreed to allow for this, so these were not forced matrix transplants. Soul matrix families themselves were also transplanted to other matrices that had their organization and energies intact. There were numerous host matrix families involved, all of them from other dimensional bands. Each of them had their own orientation and methods, and brought their own unique perspectives and energetic coding to the experiment. Human strain would have been lost to digression and self-termination if it had not been for this intervention. You would not be who you are today had these events not transpired. During these centuries of retraining and genetic reorganization, the humans evolved. Some were unable to make the transition successfully and became extinct in your terms. Those humans who had interbred with the animal presence indigenous to Earth had the most difficult time with reorganization. Their biologies could not undergo the transmutations involved in the development of intellect as you know it, and so they met with demise, usually due to changing environmental circumstances. Other humans, whose strain had not been overly diluted by animal interbreeding, were able to make the transition successfully. The perceptual quality you know as intellect was born during the first seeding of the 12 tribes, between 20 and 25 million years ago. Though the Brno involvement did preserve the species, and the majority of soul matrix transplants were successful, these events also created other challenges for the developing species. As mentioned in the previous section, soul matrix transplants create a variety of side effects. One such effect being the clearing of organic memory, or removal of the information stored in the original soul matrix. This loss of memory, there is often the re-emergence of trace or ghost memory imprints as the biological cells still hold residual electrical impulses from the original pattern. The species is presently suffering from these effects, induced by subsequent soul matrix transplants that occurred thousands of years ago in terms of your time. As the species evolved, it was necessary for the new host matrices to create a remembered past for its newly acquired aspects in time. Genetic material that had once linked these aspects to their original soul matrices remained disassembled within the cellular structure of the body, while the host matrices manufactured new memories and new ideologies that were appropriate to the times and stage of development of the species. All of your major world religions were seeded into your culture during this time of transplanting and reorganization of the genetic code. The problem of ghost impressions or fragmented bits of original cellular memory required some framework of explanation to the developing intellect of the species. Some groups handled this problem by making these impressions off-limits to the human, teaching that these images and impressions were bad or evil and must be avoided. The intellectual facilities of the digressed human species at that time was not ready to understand concepts of genetics, thus they were not ready to comprehend the truth of their origins. leading them away from the old memory imprints and into a focus upon the new program that the hosts were trying to instill. The humans were allowed to develop a clear linear focus of identity in time, so as to become functional within linear, present-moment reality, while developing a sense of consistent linear progression of identity through time. That time exploring the ghost images that were surfacing from the dismantled DNA would have created such bleed-through from the old soul matrix that development of intellect would have been impossible. So in the early teachings things were put simply. Gods, demons, the ghost images emerging from cellular memory, laws, and punishments. Portions of the truth, in diluted and symbolic form, were given to the species as self-awareness grew. Humans of the first seeding evolved under host matrix transplants until the outbreak of the electric wars 5,509,000 years ago. Matrix transplants were also used successfully during the second seeding after the close of the electric wars. Creation myths. Religions were given to you by the host matrix families, according to their particular orientation. Creation myths were provided and orchestrated through holographic inserts. Though divergent in content, these seed religions all shared practical information for day-to-day behavior that would assist the species in its evolution. Originally, all of the sacred teachings addressed the reality of the soul matrix family, the universal teachings of the Dhoratura as they are often called. Each of your present world religions has its common root in the ancient teachings of the Dhoratura. The original plan for the species, as dictated by the original Turanusium creator groups and their Brno allies, was the evolution of the species and the growth of intellect and intelligence to the point where the truth of origins could be understood. Once the new human subspecies evolved to comprehend their origins, they would be able to reassemble the dismantled DNA within their cellular structure, reorganize the actual original memory imprints, and with the help of interdimensional teachers reconnect to their original soul matrix families. For only through this connection to their original soul matrices could the species rebundle the 12-strand DNA of the first Turanusium prototype. The 12 subspecies of humans seeded after the destruction of the Turanusium race could fulfill their genetic imprint. The biological transmutation of the species into that original superhuman Turanusium race could be achieved. Throughout time, teachings have been given to your race to assist its evolution toward that greater purpose. Teachings presently available to you contain some of the original information, but all of them have been purposely manipulated, edited, and rearranged. While there are many within the universe and the other dimensions who desire to see the fulfillment of your genetic potentials, and who are ready to welcome you as the new bearers of the Turanusium strain, there are also some who do not wish for you to achieve this. You will recall from earlier in this section we discussed the electric wars. There were numerous groups in competition for the Earth territories at that time, and it was only because of the intervention of the Brno that the Earth was protected as a forum in which the Turanusium could be reseeded and evolve. The original Turanusium had been created as a guardian creator species. Their purpose in maturity was to become conscious co-creators with other universal cultures and to serve as guardians and overseers for the evolution of the life forms upon Terra and also for the planet itself. You perhaps understand why some of those groups who had interest in Earth and Terra for their own purposes would not want you to evolve back into the original grandeur that once belonged to you? If you succeed in your transmutation into your original form, the planets and their destiny will be in your hands. You will be the protectors of these territories, and it is you who will stand in the way of the other forces that desire to utilize these planets. Brno originally chose to assist in your evolution because, if success was achieved, the best interests of the planets and their local galaxies would be served. Brno were not supportive of the agendas of these other groups as they were primarily self-serving. If your experiment is a success, the other groups will not have access to Earth and Terra. Some of these groups cannot accept that decision. If your experiment fails, and your species proves itself unable to fulfill its role as guardian creator, the Brno have agreed to withdraw their involvement. This would open the Earth and Terran territories to other potential guardians. Though this would not be in the best interest of the evolution of the planets and their other life forms, this would be allowed, as Earth and Terra exist within a free will universe. Much hangs in the balance within your evolution, and your species has matured enough to begin to understand the truth of its lineage and the role it is intended to play. Teachings that have been given to you throughout time are intended to assist you in your evolution. Those who desire to thwart your progress, who desire to keep you within the role of unaware, subservient workers, have time and again invaded the sanctity of those original teachings. Holographic inserts have been used throughout your history to distort the teachings and confuse or mislead the species. Other attempts at forced matrix transplant have been orchestrated. We have mentioned before the concept of a frequency fence. Now we will elaborate upon this idea, explaining how it has been used to create the present state of chaos, confusion, and fragmentation within your species. Then you will begin to get an idea of what has been stolen from you, how you have been robbed of your birthright and enslaved to do the bidding of other dimensional and galactic groups that have little interest in your well-being. Frequency fence is a technology possessed by those who have a working understanding of universal physics. Through the manipulation of sound wave patterns and cycles, many things can be created. For the energy you identify as sound serves as the glue that holds together matter patterns within the time matrix. Those who are adept at manipulating sound have great power at their disposal, much greater than you can imagine. Sound directs matter, and thus anything cloaked in matter can be directly influenced by sound. Human DNA functions within a very specific pattern of frequency. This frequency directs all of the body's processes and thus the type and range of perception that can be experienced through that biological organism. One desired to direct the focus of human perception, a knowledge of sound genetics would be needed. We have previously referred to these sound genetics as the language of energy, light and sound, the language of Kalanta. See page 2. Sound genetics are part of this language, and they have great bearing upon the human condition. What we call the Kalanta codes exist within the cellular pattern of your biology, and also within the literal strands of DNA. They represent the specific sound patterns that combine to form the frequency bands of your biological matter, and thus set the base frequency codes within which your conscious focus will take place. Depending upon the arrangement and activation of these codes, you will have either a great range of perceptual and experiential freedom or a very limited range of focus while you are within a matter-based form. Your species experienced the soul matrix transplants thousands of years ago. The DNA held certain Kalanta code patterns that were set by the host matrix families. Carefully disassembled the original codes within your DNA and replaced these electrified sound patterns with those from their own matrix organizations. Like the interior of your cells, the soul matrices and the time and energy matrices are composed and directed by these organizations of electrified sound particles. These particles are composed of units of conscious energy, and they serve as carriers of identity as well as carriers of the blueprints of matter. Patterns of your original soul matrices were left in disassembled form within the cellular pattern, but were not directly attached to the newly implemented DNA organizations that took place through the processes of the soul matrix transplants. Original Kalanta code patterns were left within the cellular imprint so that once your species had evolved into cognition of its true lineage, you would have with you the original codes needed to reassemble your connection to the original soul matrix. Once your species became aware of these realities, it would be able to draw these patterns out of their latent and disorganized state and reintegrate them into the active DNA strands. This process of reintegration would take several centuries to complete. But in keeping the old codes stored in your cells, you would have the tools needed to begin this genetic healing. Certain key codes that would link and organize the latent codes to your active DNA structure were removed and stored within the host matrix families. Reaching a certain level of development, physically, mentally, and spiritually, the host...
A little after mid...
Reaching a certain level of development, physically, mentally, and spiritually, the host soul matrix would then set a path of instructions for you to follow, as individuals and groups, which would lead to the retrieval of these stored key codes. Some of these instructions emerged throughout your history within the sacred texts of your major religions and belief systems. As you were led through certain progressions of earthly dramas, you were led closer and closer to the frequencies that would allow you to access the key codes and begin your process of reintegration of the latent soul matrix particles. Portion of the disassembled codes from your original soul matrices has been recently identified by your scientists, who have labeled this subparticle phenomenon junk DNA. This is no junk. Instead, part of the heritage that will one day lead you back to the wholeness of your identity. Key codes of access that were removed and placed in storage were kept separate from the base imprint of your DNA, and thus out of your perceptual range, by the employment of a frequency fence. This frequency fence was created through splicing out certain configurations within the stored key codes, then linking together those portions that were taken out, disconnecting them from the stored key codes. This created a literal barrier in minute sound particles that kept your base DNA from picking up the contents of the electrified sound signals that were stored. This is a frequency fence. It is created by editing and splicing together specific portions of a frequency band that serves to remove the receivers on one end of the wave pattern and quarantine the other portions of that band, whereas the new wave pattern generated through the splice overrides the original wave structure, sending portions of it riding above this artificially created wave pattern. It is a form of frequency modulation, and when applied to the base tones, base sound units of the Kalanta codes of the human DNA effectively creates a perceptual block by altering the electrical impulse patterns and thus the chemical and hormonal operations within the biological structure. The original frequency fence employed by the host soul matrices was used to allow you time to develop as a species, without disabling your physical bodies through excessive frequency input. Matter particles of which you were composed had to expand through time before they would be able to hold the amount of energy contained within the key codes. So as your intellect developed, so did your physical structure. Natural progression to enlightenment would have occurred had there not been uninvited intervention on the part of the groups who desire to see you fail in your evolutionary mission. If things had gone well, you would have developed more rapidly, and you would be well on your way to fulfilling your Turanusium imprint. Instead, there were setbacks. About 1 million years ago, during the second seeding, certain of the disruptive groups began to visit your planet in hope of figuring out a way to divert your progression. Some of these beings were related to the Zeta Reticuli, and carried various types of reptilian form. They were highly intelligent, but not well suited to the Earth environment. Drakons. The group that created the most disruption within your genetic imprint was a group known as the Drakon. Drakon originated from a different planetary system in your universe. They visited your planet during several periods of the first, second, and third seedings. They created certain strains of their own species that could live comfortably within the Earth environment. Combining certain strains of reptilian life present upon your planet, they integrated their own coding into these hybrids. Dinosaurs were originally vegetarian and quite docile in temperament. Through the Drakon experiments, hybrids were created, carrying the more aggressive tendencies of that race. These were the original prototypes of your carnivorous reptiles. Drakon used their reptilian hybrids to monitor human development from their home system. About 1 million years ago, when the Drakon had gained enough information through these observations, they began mutating captured humans, seeding the women through rather painful inductions carried out during their frequent visitations. Hybrids that resulted were not what Drakon had hoped for, as they could not survive within the Earth environment and had to be taken to the Drakon home planet. Drakon-human hybrids are known as the Draco's reptilian race. Through experimentation upon these hybrid creatures, the Drakon were able to access some of the Kalanta code particles that held in place the original human frequency fence. They poked holes in the existing fence, having no idea of the potential results of their actions, which began a process of information leakage from the host soul matrices. Human mind and body were not yet mature enough to assimilate these code fragments effectively, and the fragments began to set in motion activation of the stored original soul matrix codes, junk DNA. This created havoc within the developing human biology, as a resurgence of the ghost cellular imprints began. It was during these times that the aforementioned Zionites, time-traveling Zeta-human Ethian hybrid from the future time coordinates, first intervened, in hope of accelerating the biological evolution of the species by creating hybrids among a select group of humans. These humans were chosen randomly throughout the 12 tribes, and were imbued with the silicate matrix from the Zionite code. This allowed them to synthesize, through a course of several generations, the host matrix code patterns that had leaked through the holes in the frequency fence. During this time, the humans were taught the technologies needed for them to begin their migration underground, in preparation for the Draken Presence extermination program that was scheduled to take place. About 956,500 years ago, the cycles of the Earth pattern were approaching a time of shift, where the magnetic grid poles would partially reverse. Aware of the problem of the Draken upon Earth, the Brno agreed to accelerate this cycle slightly so the Draken monitors would be destroyed by the climatic changes that would occur with the magnetic grid shift. For several hundred years prior to the shift, populations of the Earth were moved underground, the humans as well as numerous forms of plant and animal life. Eventually you will find evidence of this historical period. When the pole shifts and resulting weather changes occurred, the Draken monitor hybrids were destroyed, and the Draken could no longer monitor and manipulate the human frequency fence, as they had depended upon their Earth extensions to carry out this manipulation. In subsequent events, the Draco's race was banned from Earth by Guardian forces, temporarily removing the Draken problem from the course of human evolution. Through these events, the original plan of human evolution was accelerated as the Zionite crystal gene made its way into the human genetic pool. Biblical stories of Adam and Eve bore the symbolic coloring of these events, as Eve eating the apple at the seduction of the serpents symbolically represented the Draken forced interbreeding with the human females, and the resulting opening of the host soul matrix, the symbolic tree of knowledge. It was indeed the opening of this bank of knowledge that birthed into human perception the exaggerated duality that is your lineage. Duality of perception created by the fragments of the original soul matrix memories and the new memory fragments emanating through the leaked Kalanta code fragments from the host matrix families. Two sets of memory imprints directing one body. This is part of the challenge humans of your time face in gaining sovereignty over your genetic heritage. While you remain unaware of the contents and processes within your genetic makeup, you will remain vulnerable to those who once again wish to manipulate you away from the true purposes for which you have come. Intentional distortions of sacred teachings. We'll now address the issues involving the Zeta, their plan for using holographic inserts to orchestrate the mental takeover of forced matrix transplants in hope of gaining dominion over the Earth territory, and the need for humans to become aware of these events and learn how to conduct themselves within them. This invasion of mind has been planned by the Zeta and others for many, many years. You have been cultivated toward its success. Numerous attempts have been made throughout your history, by various groups, to divert you from your successful path of evolution. As we have said, Earth is a valuable piece of property in universal terms. Teachings, as seeded by the host matrix families, have been heavily distorted. Much information was removed from these writings in order to keep you unaware. Humans themselves, under the direction of these malaligned forces, have twisted and withheld key aspects of these teachings throughout your history, and there is not a single religious text within your times that has not been subjected to these manipulations. For this reason, much new information is being offered. But even with contemporary translations, you must watch for these intended distortions. Through the distortions in your traditions, you have been taught to disown personal power, to deny your perceptions, and to perpetually distract yourselves from looking inward to the knowledge that lives within your connection to the host soul matrices that now serve as the organizational structures for your fragmented genetic code. These distortions in teachings have served to further rob you of the ability to link with the soul matrix and instead have cultivated you to adhere to the dictates of outside figures of authority. As we have said, your species has been cultivated for the success of a mental takeover, and you are presently suffering from just that sort of takeover, as most of you have little idea of how to connect to the soul matrix. In previous sections we mentioned the brainwashing program. This program was set in motion by those factions desiring your failure, and they have done a good job in coloring your perceptions to hold prejudice against the very information that would set you free to grow and evolve successfully. Through your traditions you have been taught to obey, to follow blindly the ideas others have handed to you and to fear and mistrust the very nature of your humanity. You have been taught that you were powerless and unworthy, and that your bodies were somehow wretched and unclean. These were not the original teachings. Manipulators utilized portions of the original teachings, distorting them, steering you away from the secrets held within your bodies, feeding the erroneous idea that you could connect with your soul by disowning the body, when in truth you must connect with the soul matrix through the biological form. Teachings were twisted to make you believe that you could find God by searching outside of yourselves, or by appeasing some self-appointed authority figure who had the power to hold your divinity for you. You were led to follow the letter rather than the spirit of the law, and the laws you were taught to follow had been purposely misinterpreted so the individual could not make a personal connection to source. One time, during the early development of the species, when the adepts were working to nurture the intellectual facilities and repress the ghost memories, many of these teachings were pertinent. The mental capacity of the human at that time could not sustain the burden of certain knowledge, and so you were steered away from that knowledge. This was only meant to be temporary. Instead, through the manipulations of those repressive forces, you were kept in darkness far beyond your time. Information was withheld even after you had matured enough to integrate it effectively. You could compare your species to a child who was not allowed outside because he could only crawl and harm might come to him. Long after that child was able to walk, the freedom of the outside world was denied. Or perhaps now the child could walk away, perhaps in his maturity the child would no longer follow the commands of the parent. So it has been with the development of your species. So some of this denial could be attributed to overprotective parenting. To use an analogy, much of it was orchestrated in order to keep you helpless and subservient to those parent figures. Not all of these parents agreed that you should be allowed to mature, and those who did not became the forces working toward your demise. Who were those parent figures that nurtured you in time from innocent beings of pure perception into the thinking beings of complexity you have become in your present time? Group of interstellar and multidimensional beings, of which the Syrian and Pleiadian cultures are a part, who originally began the Turanusium experiment so long ago. The multitude of species from other galaxies who originally donated their genetic imprint at the inception of this experiment. They are your ancestors and your true forefathers and mothers, who raised you from the infancy of a new species into the adolescence of your present stage of development. Those ancestors are alive, not only within the genetic imprint that you carry, but also within their own time and dimensional continuum. They are aware of you, and they guide you still, for unlike you, they are not trapped within their own time-space coordinate. These parents have protected your species for hundreds of thousands of years. From the manipulators who desired to steal your nursery out from under you, and from the other parent species who wanted to redirect the path of your evolution to fulfill their own purposes. You were protected in your growth, and you are still. You are becoming wise. Wise enough to take a hand in your own protection and in the fulfillment of your genetic heritage. Presently the Zeta are toying with you. This scheme has already been redirected to a large degree, but will remain a threat to you until are able to see your way clearly through the manipulations they have in store. Seeds and star seeds. To you by the ancient ones, through whom the knowledge of the original truths will come. Some of you carry within you the assembled codes of your original soul matrix. Some of you evolved beyond the need of the host matrix families because long ago you were gifted with the silicate matrix. There are those among you now who carry the crystal gene. They are on the accelerated path of evolution, and knowingly or unknowingly, will lead your species to freedom. They are the starseeds. You one of them? Members of your species that were not imbued with the gift of the Zionites, who do not carry the silicate matrix within their junk DNA and soul matrix codes, are known as the Earth Seeds. All of your species originated from the 12 tribes of the Turanusium subprototype. Not all of you were selected for the Zionite experiments and resulting accelerated genetic strain. The original selection of the first encounter was random. This does not mean that one group is superior to the other in terms of innate value, as all of you are needed for the fulfillment of the Turanusium imprint. The starseeds are ahead of their time, so to speak, and so they carry with them the burden of the sleeping Earth Seeds, and the responsibility of helping them to awaken. Earth Seeds are still connected to the host matrix families. They have not yet activated the Kalanta codes that would allow them to begin assembly of their original memory patterns. Many of them have not yet passed through the original frequency fence that would allow the reassembly process to begin. These humans are the most vulnerable to manipulation through holographic inserts, and it is some of these that the Zeta desire to utilize for the breeding of a worker race. The plan for the selected Earth Seeds involves the eventual contamination of food, water and air supply with certain elemental components that would repress the emotional facilities and thus cut off the possibility of the individuals to link with their host matrix families. Biological block to the frequencies of the host matrices. Those who are not selected are intended to be removed through dramas created by holographic inserts, such as the Christ drama example we used in the previous section. Zeta have other plans in mind for the starseeds. Silicate matrix within the starseed genetic imprint is valuable to the Zeta. Is this element for which they search during unauthorized, by the soul matrix, abductions, for they hope to create a stronger, more versatile hybrid through humans carrying this code. View the starseeds as the potential breeders of a three-dimensional Earth hybrid race that they hope will repopulate the planet once the clearing is completed.
Give a notification on, bro.
Unenlightened Zeta also fear the starseeds, as they possess the potential ability of seeing through the holographic inserts. Starseeds also are able to more easily partake of multidimensional communication, which enables them to go above the frequency fence the Zeta are working now to erect within the human DNA code. Remember, the frequency fence is a type of sound technology that utilizes contrived frequency modulation. Because the starseed is already relinked, to some degree, to its original soul matrix, the Zeta cannot perform a forced matrix transplant upon a starseed without first dismantling the soul matrix. This is very difficult to do with the technology they have available. The starseeds are protected multidimensionally by the Zionites, as well as by other groups, Enlightened Zeta, Ethian, Ranthia, Syrian, Pleiadian, Brno, and many other presences. Starseeds are the greatest threat to the old Zeta agenda, and so the Zeta try to find other ways in keeping them out of operation. Zeta do whatever possible to keep the starseed from a
Good evening, dear. I came as soon as I could. Any specific discomfort in your eye? Get ready, set, go. This side first. Keep looking. You're doing great. So let me remove them. Check with this one. Still this one. Okay, perfect. What color do you see now? Welcome. Can I get your full name? I'll just mark you your arrival time here. How are you feeling today? Any specific discomfort in your eyes? Any dryness or strain? Anything bothering you? I'll do a close-up examination. Okay, here we go. So we're just physically observing your eyes, looking at symmetry, any type of discoloration or swelling. So, you mentioned you have dry eye. So for dry eye, before we begin, I'm going to do a bit of treatment just to moisten the surface and have better results, because dryness can actually affect your baseline. Okay. So I'm going to use this vaporizer. Would you like it to be heated? Okay. So you can either close your eyes if you wish, or you can keep it open. Okay, I'll place it right onto your eye. You will feel nothing. Okay, ready? Set. Go. Okay, we'll do this side first. How does it feel? Not too bad. Okay, good. The other one. Tight, soothing. Fun, blotting. I'll get you tissues. Here we go. Just a bit of tissue on both eyes. Is that okay? I know sometimes it can be, a different sensation, but it's actually quite soothing and helpful, especially before our exam, okay? How is it? It's good. I'm going to fix you here just a bit. Okay. So, for the next step, I'll need to lower you a bit, okay? Let me know if something is uncomfortable. Okay, let me just attach here. Just adjust your seat. Alright. Okay. So I'll just adjust the seat here. Okay. Could you look up just a bit? Okay, good. Can you see the chart behind me? Okay, good. So I'm going to dim some lights on the next. gonna leave some just for contrast. Okay, so you said you brought your own prescription glasses. They're here. And how long have you had this prescription? Okay. Definitely maybe time to update. I'll keep that in mind and we'll test it today too. I'll give it a bit of a wipe. Is this frame usually comfortable? No pinching, nothing. Okay, good. Would you say your vision has gotten better or worse? Okay. So it can happen, your eyesight can actually, like your minus, it can get better closer to your 40s, simply because with age you might start having the opposite effect. So your plus growing, so it cancels out the minus a bit. Isn't that something? Okay, so I have them here. We will do some prescription testing with these on as well, just to make sure that everything is up to date. Okay. So I'll do some basic pupil response inspection. I'll use my flashlight. So we'll do some basic eye inspection, pupil response, eye alignment, just any external structures. Okay. So try looking at me, just ahead of you, and bright light coming now. Okay, just keep looking. You're doing great. Okay, so we're just taking a look at how your pupils respond to light. Oops. Did I flash it too much? Pardon me, okay. Here's the bright light.